Good morning, everybody. I'm glad that you're here. I think we have some new people here with us today, which is awesome. Welcome. I also have two of our academic counselors joining us today, Ms. Ellis and Ms. Isied, to talk about the counselors did a presentation last night about what we need to know about going to college and applying for college. So this information and the information last night, and I'm sure they said, is geared towards this year's juniors. Realize that college information can change from year to year. So if you are a parent of somebody that is not currently a junior, that's okay. But just realize that sometimes information may change. So when it's time for your child to apply for college, stuff might be slightly different. It doesn't drastically change, but sometimes it does change. They're not going to be doing the whole presentation over. Ms. Ellis did drop into the chat the slide from last night, and actually, Nicole, you might want to do that kind of from time to time as more people come in, because people come in late, they don't see the chat. But this is a time for you guys as parents to ask questions about the college application process. And so we don't really have a presentation that we're going to be sharing. This conversation today is really going to be driven by all of you. You can either raise your hand if you want to ask a question like out loud, or you can drop it in the chat and we'll answer it. Please. I don't know, Nicole and Margaret, if you guys want to introduce yourselves and real quick.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicole Ellis, and I'm one of the school counselors here at Piedmont. And my caseload is students with last names S-I to Z.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Margaret Isied. I work with students last names Nguyen, first name K, all the way through students with the last names SH. I'm fairly new to Piedmont Hills, but I'm really excited to be here and welcome all of you.
All right, so we've got a question. Does early decision increase your chances for admission? Which one of you wants to take that?
I'm glad to take that. So early decision pools are a little bit different than a regular decision pool. The colleges are well aware that students that apply for early decision are essentially committing to that school. So the pools look a little bit different. They're typically students that are very much prepared because they're an early application. So it's hard to, I don't want to say yes or no to the question, but I do want to recognize that every single student that applies to early decision is essentially telling that institution, I will go to your school if you accept me. You are committing to that. It's a binding agreement. So the pools do look different. And what can happen in any early pool, which it could be early action or early decision, is you can either get accepted, denied, or pushed into their regular admissions cycle. So there's different things that can happen once you apply. And so they look at that student in a different light because they know that the student is willing to come regardless. So I think that's kind of where the difference lies. Whereas a student that applies regular decision is more likely applying to many other schools and potentially applying to other early school plans as well, if that makes sense. So it is essentially telling that school you are making a commitment if you do get accepted. So hopefully that kind of helps a little bit. I don't want to say yes or no to the question, but I think it is giving that school a pretty good idea that you are very, very interested in that particular institution, because you can only apply to one school early decision. So hopefully that helps.
Okay. The next question we have is, when is the best time to ask teachers for the recommendation letters?
For that, I would say during the fall of their senior year. So we start in early August. So I would say that they could ask them when we come back in the fall. So ranging from, typically students would ask around September. So September to kind of like the month of September, early October is kind of getting a little bit later, but it also depends on what their deadlines are. But I would say September is usually the time frame when they would approach their teachers.
Yeah, and I would add to that as somebody who has written many a letter of recommendation, don't ask last minute. Because that's like the worst thing to do. So give the teacher plenty of time. And like my recommendation is to ask in person and then follow up with an email. So that, they don't say yes, because like you want to follow up with like a resume and like that's, because teachers usually ask for like more information because they know who the student was as their teacher, but they don't necessarily know like all of the volunteer work that they did or, extracurriculars and like all the stuff that a student does. So following up with an email with all that information would be, as somebody, like I said, somebody who's written hundreds and hundreds of those letters, that's what I would say.
And thank your teachers afterwards as well.
Yes, absolutely. Do universities review all 4 years of high school grades or just a couple of the last years?
So when the student goes to apply, they will have to put in all of their coursework and grades from, freshman, sophomore, junior year. They won't have any of their senior year grades out at that point in the fall of senior year. So they do put in all those, like manually input those coursework and grades from all the years. And then also, when the student then has to commit to the school, at that point, they will have to send the final transcript, and it's usually due around sometime in July. And then that will have the senior year coursework and grades on it.
And then I just wanted to add for that, for CSUs and UCs specifically, they're looking at a GPA from 10th and 11th. However, they are reviewing their entire course, 9 through 12 grades. So if they do receive a grade in freshman year that doesn't meet the A through G, essentially like if they receive like a D or an F, that would still be taken into consideration, even though they're only looking at the GPA from grade 10 and 11. So they are reviewing all 4 years and even taking into consideration coursework from senior year, even though they don't have the grades yet.
Okay. For SESP, I don't know what that is. I don't know if you guys do. The requirement to meet all A through G requirement with a C or higher, like say my kid in the math 5th year according, I'm not understanding this.
So I think they're referring to the Spartan Eastside Promise.
Oh, there you go. I've never seen an acronym for it.
So the question is, do the requirement to meet all A through G? Yes, so they do have to meet those A through G requirements with a C or higher. And then there is also an additional GPA cutoff that they have to meet. So for this past fall, it was 2.75 GPA or higher. And so again, like Ms. Isied said, they're going to be looking at the 10th and 11th grade courses, A through G courses for that, calculating that GPA. And so that cutoff for Spartan Eastside Promise is a little bit higher than the CSU minimum, because the CSU minimum GPA is 2.5. But, to be able to be admitted under Spartan Eastside Promise, it's a 2.75 GPA, and they must have a C or higher in those A through G courses. And they also have to meet all of the application deadlines for SJSU.
She asked to follow up in the chat. So I think what she's saying is that she's in the 5th year of math right now. So the requirement is 3, the recommendation is 4. Student is in year 5 and received a lower than a C. So I think she's asking, is she still eligible?
Does she meet, but she's in a C or lower now?
I mean, I would say yes, because she's got the minimum 3 years. And even the recommended like 4 years.
As long as the overall GPA doesn't fall below those numbers that Ms. Ellis just mentioned, your student would still technically qualify. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And as long as they, like Miss Davis says, it's the 3 years of math. So math 3 and higher. And then as long as, it's a C or higher. Does she?
The question about recommendation letters. how many recommendation letter does a student need? So typically the college will tell you what the requirement is. So many times it's 1 or 2, depending on the institution. I wouldn't necessarily go above and beyond that unless they're asking you to. I've had students who just asked like 5 or 6 teachers and then only 2 could submit. So the other teachers that wrote those letters were very disappointed. So just keep that in mind. What will the actual application allow for? And I would really only stick to what that is. At a certain point, you're not really adding anything to the application just by asking multiple people for letters of recommendation. I would stick to the requirement. That would be my recommendation.
So my daughter's teacher said he's going to retire this year. My daughter wants to ask for his recommendation letters. Is it too early to ask at the end of this year? I would actually, I'm assuming that it's Mr. Hawley because he's the only one I know that's retiring, unless there's somebody else. Like if it's another teacher, let me know. Because whoa, secret. Yes, I would say that definitely go ahead and ask before this year is out, and she might just do a preliminary ask and maybe ask for like a personal email address for the teacher. Sometimes with retired teachers, the district can be a little weird. Like sometimes the district's like cutting off the email address like once they're gone, and then sometimes they have access to that email address for like years. And so I can never predict what they're going to do. And so the district email may not necessarily work in the fall. And so kind of like asking, like, I mean, it could be like a preliminary ask, like, and just getting the contact information so that she can, when she's got all the stuff ready, she can do it. Because right now, like asking now, like she hasn't actually started the application process. So there's no way for like the teacher to like submit a letter, because the letter doesn't go to the student. The letter goes directly to the college, or if a lot of times it's Common App, and so that you just do it directly through there. So the students don't actually ever see the letters. And so I would say that for a teacher that's retiring, getting the contact information so that she can contact them in the fall would be the best bet. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that.
And then just have a backup plan in case for some reason you can't get a hold of that person when it comes closer to the time of the deadline, because I know I've had similar situations where they then just couldn't get a hold of the person later. So that would just be my only other recommendation.
Yeah. Hopefully, you know, the teacher says that they would do it, they still would, but you know, you never know. They retire, they go off into the sunset and sailing around the world or living their best life. And who knows? Other questions that you guys have? Or Margaret, Nicole, I don't know if you guys just have some like general recommendations for stuff that they should do over the summer. I mean, my recommendation is to use this summer in between the junior and senior year to get everything organized and like how kind of map out with your child. What colleges do they think they want to apply to? When are those due dates for everything, and kind of calendar everything out. It can get very stressful in the fall of their senior year with doing all of the applications. And so the more organized you are with it and, you know, kind of calendar it out and like know when stuff is, so you're planning ahead, the better off you're going to be. And, you know, our teenagers, as we've talked a lot about this year, they're not always the best on staying on top of everything. So this is you as a parent really coming and helping them with that, I think would be really great. I don't know, Nicole, Margaret, if you have anything to add to what they should be doing this summer.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, to stay organized and also compile their list of colleges earlier on. So doing that college research now so that they can have like an idea of like where they're going to apply, so that they're aware of like, you know, different schools and systems have different deadlines. So in the summer, if they could really have that list solidified of like, okay, these are the schools I'm going to apply to. And then if they haven't had a chance to visit those schools, if they're able to, this summer, I would recommend going to those college campuses because oftentimes, what is on paper is different from the actual feeling when the student's at the school. So I would say like doing those college visits if they can this summer, and then trying to really have that list before the school year starts. And they can begin those college essays early, like this summer, so that they're not so overwhelmed in the fall when it comes time to do the application, do the essays, get their letters. So there's, the fall, there's going to be a lot going on as well with their classes. So as much as they can do early, I would recommend.
And just really looking at like all of your options when it comes to, colleges, whether that's four-year college, community college, or other options that your student is interested in. And I know really like this process does begin fairly early, and even thinking about the financial aid process that also begins in October as well and ends in the March of their senior year. So just kind of like thinking about all of your options. I know some of you like this may be your first senior, and some of you it's like this is just like next. So definitely like considering, your students' options. And I think there's really great options, particularly here in the Bay Area and outside of even the state of California. I know just looking at college admissions in the last few years has been, I think, disheartening for some. And so just to realize like there are so many colleges out there, and like the name brand colleges are not the only ones that are available for students, and for us to really consider schools outside of the Bay Area, outside of the state, and just recognize that there are just so many great colleges out there for students, and really looking at what's the best fit for your student. So just something to think about.
Yeah. Okay. So questions: how and when to order the official final transcript? Is it free to have your official transcript sent to an electronic destination? The questions about ordering a transcript: who do we contact if the school closes during the summer? First off, the school does not close during the summer. We are open. I am a year-round employee. I do take vacation, but there's always somebody here during the summer. And if you look on our website, actually, I will, hold on, let me get it up. And I'll show you guys where it is. Let me share my screen real quick. So this is our website. If you go under registrar, or it says transcripts, and here it tells you exactly how to order transcripts. Okay, so this is how it is done. But I think don't we do the first one when they graduate for free? I'm pretty sure we do. Their final transcript when they graduate, like the one that goes to college. So this is like when they say charging, like that's if you just need it, like you need additional ones later on in life. But that's how you order the final transcripts. And then when they're graduating, like right now for this year's seniors, like this is when the counselors start putting out that information, like especially when we get close to graduation like that last week, they're kind of blasting it all over. Like, this is what you need to do to get your final transcript. This is the process. Because obviously the final transcript is not final until they finish. So that's not ready until June. That's not something that you can do now. Okay. If letters are sent to the school directly, does that mean the student will need to decide which school to go already in the fall of their senior year? Or usually, well, I mean, yes, the student is deciding where to go in the fall of their senior year because they're applying for college, because they do that in the fall of their senior year. And so the letters of recommendation are part of the application like packet. So that's part of the thing to do when we say like things to do this summer. Every school has different requirements for letters of recommendation. And Margaret and Nicole, correct me if I'm wrong, letters of recommendation generally are for private schools, right? Like I know the CSUs don't require letters of recommendation. So you need to look at like what school are we thinking about applying for, and do they require letters of recommendation? Because a lot of schools actually don't. And so then you don't have to worry about that. But yeah. And so generally how it works, if I'm remembering correctly, like a lot of private schools, they apply through the Common App and they put in like the email address of like this is who is going to write me a letter of recommendation. And so then the Common App actually sends that to the teacher or whoever. It doesn't necessarily have to be a teacher, and then they do it right there.
Mhm.
You guys have anything to do that?
It's beautifully said. Yes, perfect.
Sorry.
Yeah, so you're not asking for like letters by institution. If it's all through the Common App, if you're applying to multiple private institutions and they're all asking for 1 or 2 letters, then you would just put in those teachers' email addresses and it will send to those institutions that you apply to.
Yeah, which is a great development. I'm old enough to remember like when I first started teaching, like it used to be that you had to write like, give like, send like 5 different copies of the same letter and like send them out in the mail. And it was a whole pain. And now it is a lot simpler for teachers to do it. So is a resume required for a college application?
So not necessarily a resume per se, but they do ask on some applications about activities that you have done, clubs, sports, things that you do beyond your period 1 through 6 day. So anything that you're involved in, they will ask for that information, specifically how long you did that for, how many hours per week, and how many like weeks per year. So those are things that if your student has not like compiled a list of all of the extracurricular activities that they've done, honors, they may have received awards. I would say like that is something that you may want to consider doing over the summer, just so that it's super easy once you pop into that application in the fall. And that's required for the UC application and for the private application. So the Common App that we were talking about earlier. CSUs really don't look at much beyond their coursework and their A through G requirements. So they don't really take anything else beyond that into consideration, but the other institutions will.
And we have some slides on how to compile those activities lists for those applications. So you can see there specifically what, you'll have to say for that.
Yeah, and then we linked the slides in the chat, but they're also on the counseling page and the website, right? And then that was, Nicole, you said that was also emailed out to all of the seniors today too. Or
Yes.
not seniors, juniors. Seniors are, sorry. So
Yeah.
you guys can use that as a resource. Okay, my son took a math enrichment class. Do I have to request an official transcript to the college?
So because math enrichment is kind of not its own, like, I'm trying to explain it, like official school, and Piedmont Hills, they give the students transcript to Piedmont Hills and we post it, on their Piedmont Hills transcript. So in that case, I believe it's not going to have a separate one because they're not really their own like separate school per se. So
yeah,
it will
they are. It was kind of a weird thing. But we do put math enrichment on our transcript. So I would say as long as it's on the Piedmont Hills transcript, you're probably good.
Mhm.
How far back do you need to compile the list of like activities and stuff, like from age 7 or just middle school? Just high school. They only care about high school. Yeah, being in like the Boy Scouts and like when they were 8, they're not going to care. But yeah, just high school stuff. Good. Nicole linked the slides for everybody that came in late. Those are the slides. Oh, sorry, I have a timer going off. I don't know why. I think we've gotten all the questions. You guys have more questions? I know you're gonna like bombard us.
Oh, I was going to add that the UC application and common application are actually going to open on August 1st. So that's for the UC, it's earlier this year. So they have access to viewing that and already working on that. They won't be able to submit it then, but they can at least already see everything they're going to need to do and work on it starting August 1.
And that's actually kind of nice because it's a couple weeks before school starts. And so
yeah.
we've answered everybody's questions. I don't know if you guys went over this in your presentation about, I mean, like which schools to apply for and having like the backup school and the reach schools and like, I mean, I just know that that's just, you know, you have like a range of schools. I have some kids that go crazy and they like apply to 15 schools, and that might be a little bit of overkill, but you probably want to avoid just applying to one. I'll never forget, this was several years ago, but when I was a teacher at Piedmont Hills, I had this student who was a brilliant student. He was super, super smart. He was in my AP class, and just so smart, but like he applied to this private school, a very prestigious private school, and only applied to that one school, and then he didn't get in, and he hadn't applied to anything else, and so he didn't go to college right after high school because he hadn't applied. And it was just like, why'd you do that? So don't make that mistake.
Yeah, definitely agree with that they should have like the target schools. Let me find the exact verbiage, but the target, the safety, and then the reach. So it would be good to have a couple in each of those categories. I know it can get, they can add up with the applications and the fees, but I think having, at least like a backup plan in case they don't get into, their dream school, like that student.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can look at the freshman admissions profile for that college for the previous like admission cycle. They'll post that. Most colleges I've seen will post that, and you'll be able to see like, this is the average GPA of the students from this past class that were admitted. And you can look, at the academics, or I guess profile of the admitted class, so that the student can kind of see, oh, like, where do I fall within the last, compared to the last admitted class of students?
Yeah. Question, how many schools is a reasonable amount to apply for? I mean, I would say, I don't know, 3 to 6. It's kind of like my gut, but.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's also to recognize, like I've had students in the past who have applied to, 20 schools, and 15 of which were reach schools. And just to like keep in mind, many of those institutions that are considered reach schools are a reach school for every person on the planet. Like Stanford is a reach school for every person on planet Earth. So it's important to recognize when the admissions rate, or the acceptance rate, sorry, is below 10%. It's just really, just keep in mind that it's very difficult to get into these institutions regardless of the GPA. Like I've seen kids that had a very high GPA, had tons of extracurriculars, get denied to some of these institutions that are considered highly selective. So just like making sure that the list is well-rounded. So if you're thinking 3 to 7 or 4 to 6, or kind of like that range, that your student is really willing to apply to and attend any of those institutions. So I've had kids apply just to apply, but they would never even consider that school. Why are we wasting $70 on that application? So just something to really think about, because I've had kids apply to, like, they were spending thousands of dollars just in application fees, and they didn't even want to consider some of those schools. They just wanted to know if they would get in. And so I was like, why are you doing this? But those are just things to really like think about. And I think just recognizing that the admissions field has shifted in the last few years. And I think with the number of applications just being so high, the percentages look very daunting of like acceptance rates. But your student has done everything that they can at this point. It is the summer before their senior year, sorry. So they've done everything they can. And now it's really up to the admissions world. And, like, we will see what happens, and you'll have, your institutions that you apply to, and then the backups, and then we'll go from there. And we're here to support you all through that process.
Okay, so if a student has no extra or just one outside schoolwork activities or extracurriculars in high school, is it really does it decrease the chance of going to college? I would say it doesn't decrease the chance of going to college the way you phrase that, because there are colleges, like you said, the CSUs don't really look at that sort of thing. From my experience, it could decrease the chance of getting into some of those reach schools for sure.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah, and like for the UC system, they use like this comprehensive review. So they are going to look at not just, you know, GPA and number of AP classes. They'll look at, you know, extracurricular activities, awards, and other kind of factors. They're looking at a whole bunch of different factors. So that's the extracurricular activities is one piece out of like the 10 things they look at and consider.
And what is it that our students are doing outside of school? So let's say they weren't able to participate in a sport because of COVID, or let's say they weren't able to participate in a lot of volunteer work because of, I mean, your students' situation has been very different than I think the years past, when these were things that they could have done throughout, like being consistent. Their 4 years was just really not possible because of the situation that we were in the last few years. And so I know colleges are recognizing that and are well aware of that. So if your student was working because they had to work, or taking care of siblings, or taking care of a grandparent, or doing something beyond just, you know, going to school, even in the last few years when COVID existed and we were really hunkered down at home, what was it that your kiddo was doing? And I think those are things that are definitely important to include in the application, or are going to be considered by colleges. And some colleges even have a very specific COVID related question. If this affected your student in a way that may not have affected others, those are questions that colleges will ask and your student will be able to answer. So everything that your student has done in the last 4 years is being taken into consideration. And it's not just those academically related things that they may have done. So something to keep in mind as well.
And the essays also are going to play a role too, with the schools that, you know, the PIQs for the UC and then the Common App essays. So that's really their time to reveal themselves, to you know, talk about any hardships they've gone through, challenges they've overcome, why they want to go into this field and pick this major. So that's another piece that they're going to look at too.
This is an interesting question. What happens if you skip a year to apply to colleges or do something else like traveling, volunteering? Are your chances of being accepted less because of the year gap? So when a student takes a gap year after high school, they just apply for you're still applying as a freshman. I think that like what we were just talking about with the essays and everything, that would be like their essay is going to be different. Like that would be like, what did they do in that year? What did they learn? I mean, I think that a lot of times colleges actually like that. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, if the student took the time to maybe explore something they're passionate about, or like travel the world, spent the year volunteering, yeah, that's definitely something that may set them apart from other applicants.
Okay, what if this student applies and they don't get accepted anywhere? They're like my student, they didn't get accepted anywhere. There's community colleges, so.
Yeah, it just brings me back to when I was in high school and I was like applied to all these UCs, and yeah, I did not get into my dream school, but you know, what I did was I went to a community college, and then I actually was able to do a transfer guarantee with Davis, and then I was able to go that way. So there are, you know, other options, great options. You know, community college they have transfer agreements with CSUs, with some of the UCs, not all, but most. And then also you know, you could transfer to a private or out of state after attending a community college, after the student goes for 2 years, a year, 3 years. So, you know, there's community college, and that application process won't start until spring of their senior year. So,
And I can just speak to that too from experience with my daughter, because my daughter she actually did get accepted to college, to four-year schools, but then decided that she wasn't ready to go away. And so this past year, she has been attending Foothill, and she's been working. And it honestly has been the best experience for her. Like, I'm so glad that she did it. She's grown up so much in this year. And so some CSUs do accept transfers as a sophomore. And so Sonoma State is one of them that they accept sophomore transfers. And so she's actually going to Sonoma State in the fall. So I wouldn't, I mean, obviously it's a scary thing that, oh my gosh, they're not going to get accepted to any colleges. If you like in your child, like they are committed, they want to go straight to a four-year school, that's absolutely that's what we're saying. Like, having that backup school that like, okay, I know they can get into this, and having that be, like something that is there, is definitely smart. But I don't want it. Community college is a great alternative. And it can be a really great experience.
Mhm.
Especially if you think like my child, like she just wasn't ready to be out on her own yet and needed another year of like living at home and, kind of this transition type year. And it's been great.
And I will say, in addition to that, because many of the community colleges have the promise programs where students and families may not have to pay a dime, as long as they meet the minimum requirements of that college, which is essentially to take full-time units, and to submit the financial aid application, you will be saving quite a bit of money. And I know the first couple of years, sometimes students are really exploring, like, what am I really passionate about? And when you're spending $0 on that exploration, it's much better than spending thousands of dollars at a four-year when your student may not necessarily know what they're really, really interested in doing. And also, I think with many of our students having taken like AP courses here or even community college courses, I've seen in my past school kiddos that were able to go the transfer route and were able to transfer earlier because they had AP credit from courses that they took at the high school, as well as community college dual enrollment courses that they were taking. I know many of our students are doing both of those things now. And I had a kiddo who walked into the doors of San Jose City College as like they were a first-time freshman, but they were at sophomore level status because of the amount of units that they had, and they were able to transfer after a year, kind of similar to what your student did, Ms. Davis. So something to like really consider. These are things that definitely, like when you're applying after the community college, at the community college for the four-year, they're actually accepting students at a higher rate from the community college than they are freshmen. So just something to also keep in mind. They have to accept students at a higher rate because those community college kids have nowhere else to go. They have to ultimately go to a four-year college to be able to get that, that degree. So just something to also consider.
And then about the timing of like applying to community college, and the timing does work out. So college applications, they do them in the fall. They're usually, I want to say that I always feel like it's like around Christmas, like in my mind, of when like the applications are due. They start getting the notices and like the acceptance, April?
Yeah, like March, April. Mhm.
Yeah. And so community college applications is like right now. So like if you see like right now, the counselors are doing an application workshop this afternoon for De Anza. Like this is the time of year that we help students with their community college applications. So they will know that if they hadn't gotten accepted to a four-year and that they need to look at the community college route, they will know. So the timing does, it works out. How to pick which community college is the best fit?
That's a good question. So we have so many local ones in this area, which we're lucky to have so many options. So what I encourage students to do is look at what particular programs are offered in different fields at each of the community colleges, because it's not the same across the board. Like I know that Foothill College has an amazing veterinary technician program where they have animals there that they get to work with that other colleges in this area don't have. So I would say to take a look at those career training programs at each of the colleges and see if there's one that your student's interested in. And then, other things like some of the community colleges have different support programs that vary too, like Some of them have honors programs where you could get preference in your admission to UCLA. So things like that, they're not all the same with the programs that they offer. And we do have a community college panel in January that we organize, and we'll have the seniors attend so that they can hear from 5 of the local community colleges and try to figure out which one would be a good fit for them.
One thing I would add to that in the consideration for community colleges is transportation. Does your child have a car that they're driving themselves, and so then you don't have to worry about it, versus are you like sharing a car where like getting them to school is going to be an issue? Do they have to take public transportation? So what is convenient? And that's definitely something to think about also, just the practicalities and logistics of all of that. Is it too late to register for college? My daughter's busy studying for AP tests. 2, is your daughter a senior right now? Like they've already been accepted, or 11th grade? Okay, so like they're applying. So right now she should be studying for her AP test. That's what's important right now, because that's next week. So good, she's studying for AP. That's good. When she's done with school, and like I would say, just like finish out the school year, let her finish her junior year, because junior year like is one of the really like important grades to like finish strong. So come June, when she's out of school, that's when start looking at college stuff, and like really using the downtime in the summer before their senior year. And like really having that plan of like college applications, and like this is the timelines, and like we were saying, like all of what they have to do. Do they need letters of recommendation, and planning all of that out? Do that during the summer. Yeah, so that way when they start school in the fall again, they've got their plan, because again, it really can get overwhelming. Yeah, so this is, we're having this conversation now to get you as parents ready for what's coming, so that you're not like caught off guard when they're senior year, and like that the fall semester of their senior year. I'm just warning you parents right now, it's the most stressful semester of their high school, and your kid is going to be stressed out, and just prepare for it. It's okay, because then the downside is their spring semester of their senior year, where they have no worries and they don't want to go to school. And we're going to talk about senioritis coming up in a couple of weeks, because it's a real thing. Senior year is an interesting year. Okay, so can you take a community college summer class for just the experience and not for credit? Do you have to report that you've taken the class when you apply? Is a high school student allowed to take the class? Yes, 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 yes. You have to have the high school and the counselors, and it goes to the counselors, the R40 form, because when they are a high school student, it has to be approved by the high school. So they just work with the counselor and having sign the R40 form. One thing that I would say on there is let us know that you're not looking to get high school credit for it. It's not something that you care about putting on the transcript, because we have certain rules when you want to get high school credit. But if you're just doing it for the experience, great, no problem. And then do they have to apply and report that to the college?
Yeah, they do ask for them to report all college coursework on the application, so they will have to. Yeah. And then I just wanted to put in a plug for Naviance because I think it's an awesome resource. So we have Naviance, which is a platform where students, they'll log into their account, they'll be able to take career assessments. And we've had them do them every year in the fall during our counseling presentations. And then they also can do a ton of college research on there as well, and career research. So, after they take those career assessments, it will link them to a results page, and it will have a bunch of careers that are recommended for them. And then they can read about those careers. They can look at the education required, the salary. And then also there's something called Super Match on Naviance, in which students can search for colleges based on what they're looking for. So do they want a small school? How do they want sports? What location do they want the school to be in? What size classes do they want? So they can look for so many different filters, so many different things, and use that to do their college and career research. And I recommend, they can do that now. They can do that in the summer.
So
And-
I just shared my screen to show you guys. This is the counseling tab on our website, and you can go down to where it says Naviance, and then it shows and explains how to log on. Okay, but that's how you can get to it. And it is a very cool tool. Absolutely. Like if you feel like you're starting, you have no idea and your child has no idea about where they want to go to school, like there's a lot of tools on there that are really, really valuable. And like you can there's features where you can compare schools and so, just start narrowing down where we say apply to 3 to 6 schools, but your kid has a list of 20 schools and you're like, wow, that's a lot of application money. You can use that to the compare tool to narrow down your list.
Yeah. And it's linked on the slides as well, Naviance, with and we have the login instructions for the students on the slides too.
So how many years does a student have to be in community college in order to transfer to the university? Where can we find the info about which community college has a program for the particular unit? So in general, most 4-year schools, you transfer as a junior. So you do 2 years as community college. Like I was saying, in my daughter's case, there are some schools that will do transfers as a sophomore, but you have to kind of go and see what that school, the 4-year school, not the community college, the 4-year school, and what their policy is for transfer students. And then if you look at the community colleges, on their websites, they'll talk about what agreements they have with CSUs. Pretty much all of the community colleges have agreements with CSUs and a transfer program, and some UCs. And so look and see, if you look on the community college websites, they will publicize that. You guys have anything to add to that?
There's also a couple links on the slideshow from last night with the tag agreements on the page with community college.
Mhm. Yeah, and sometimes students it will be less time at the community college to transfer. I think it was mentioned before, because if they've had AP classes and they already are coming into the community college with that college credit, then it could be less time. So they'll want to make sure they work with the counselor at the community college to figure out, how many years they need to be there to get all their requirements done.
That community college class over the summer for experience that later on can be very handy. So, and then speaking of that, where did they get the R40 form? You just want to explain that process?
Yeah, so the form is going to be on the community college's website. So it depends what college they want to take a class from, because they'll have their own form that they'll have to go to the website. Oftentimes I just tell the student to Google De Anza high school or De Anza dual enrollment, and then it will pop up and they'll have it on their dual enrollment page.
And then what do they do from there? Did they bring it to you guys, or do they have
Yeah, they can bring in a hard copy if they want to just drop it off here, or they can email it to us and they'll email it to their assigned counselor. So electronic or hard copy is fine.
And I do just want to say one thing, because this is being recorded also for our counselors. Their last day of work is June 3rd. So if your student decides and you guys decide you want to do a community college class after June 3rd, it's going to go straight to Ms. Pereira, who is the associate principal. because the counselors don't send it to the counselor then because they're not working over the summer, and they'll come back in August and be like, oh, that's too bad. So Ms. Pereira, who's the associate principal, she's the one that takes it. A lot of them that talk about the principal, but I don't sign those. It's done by counseling and Ms. Pereira. Okay, so don't send it to me because I will just forward it on to them. Okay. All right, so we are out of time. Hopefully this information was valuable and that you guys learned some stuff. As a parent who has been through the college application process, and also as a principal who has seen students freak out and families freak out about this process, just be organized, use the summer wisely, and it's going to be okay. It is stressful applying for college, and it's just in this whole like new world. It's going to be okay. You time for a quick question. Go ahead too. Just typing it. So yeah, but I think that
Oh, and I did want to mention that on one of the slides, we talk about all of the workshops that the counseling department puts on to help students with college and financial aid. So we have like financial aid work, 2 financial aid workshops. We have CSU, UC application workshops, Common App application workshop. And then in the spring, we do the community college workshops, and we'll also bring in some outside schools to present. So there's a lot of help available next year. So, and then also they can, email us or drop in if they need to talk with us individually and they need help.
Okay, so to your question, I'm assuming you're talking about a work permit. Counselors don't actually approve work permits. It's the counseling tech that does that, who's the secretary for the counseling department, and she works all summer. So you don't have to worry about that. You can still get work permits during the summer. And again, the application and how you do that, the process for that is also on the website. Actually, everything's on the website. So if you guys as parents aren't frequently going on our website and looking for resources, you should start doing that because we try very hard to keep that up to date and have everything on there.
Oh, that's a good WUI.
Yeah. So WUI is the Western Undergraduate Exchange. It's a consortium of institutions on the kind of western part of the United States. There's also a slide on it from last night with the direct link to their website. It's basically an agreement amongst all of these institutions that will allow for you to pay a lower tuition rate rather than just the normal out-of-state tuition rate at those particular institutions if you're coming from a state within the WUI territories. So it's a great program. Sometimes there's a specific application. Many times you just apply to the college and you may just be qualified through that process. But I would really recommend through the slideshow from last night, there's a direct link to WUI, the WUI website, which will direct you to every school and all of the programs within the school that would qualify for the WUI tuition deduction, basically.
So letting the school know that you want, I'm assuming you mean like this college you're applying to. And so like you just said, like sometimes it's a separate application and sometimes it's just, they just look at your address, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the college if you have to do something separate or not. So it will say that on the website.
Okay, so we're going to wrap this up. If you have further questions, this is what your academic counselors are here for. So email your academic counselors and they are here to help you and guide your student through this process. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks. Have a good day.